Whoa, recording in progress.
Already going. Yep. How's it going, man?
Not too bad. I'm still at work.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it's been a long day, but everybody's gone. The whole place is empty until the night crew gets here in 2 hours.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. And yeah, I like to just jump right into it. It's a podcast style format, so we can talk about anything. You can ask me questions. We can go back and forth. I like to think of it not as an interview because that gets too segmented and question and answer type thing.
Understood. I'm sure we got plenty we can cover today. So we met on turn 7 at Blackhawk, right?
Yep, that was, I believe, my first track marshal corner working weekend as a flag marshal at Blackhawk Farms Raceway is at South Beloit, Illinois. And this is the EricSwahnRacing.com podcast, I believe, episode number 129. We got Jim Probst today. So thanks for coming on, talking to me for about an hour or two today.
My pleasure. Been looking forward to it.
So yeah, we met a year and a half, 2 years ago now, back in May of 20, was it?
Yeah, you would have to tell me. I don't have a memory for that stuff anymore.
Yeah. But that was my first weekend, and you showed me the ropes. I was with Jack for the early part of the day. He was showing me around. He's a veteran of the scene over there at Blackhawk and many places he goes. But yeah, we were just over there, and he took me through every single corner of the track and where there was a Marshal post, and said, "This is what you need to look out for. There's deer over there. Keep an eye out for that. When they crash, they're going to land over here," type of thing. So it was very helpful. And then, with your help too, standing next to you all day and running out picking up bikes, that was pretty eventful.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely love turn 7 there. I don't work anything else anymore. It's you can see the incidents getting prepared to happen in that corner. Sometimes you're in a corner and just but because of the kink that leads in there, it's a lot of fun, and it's an operational corner. You're feeding control with a bunch of information, and then you're helping the starter find the leaders. It's just a fun corner to work.
And it's the last corner coming onto a main straightaway, so everybody's trying to push for that drive out of the corner. Everybody's trying to get one more position to before they cross that line, so it causes incidents. That was the first. Well, obviously, like I said, it was my first event as a marshal, but the first person I responded to didn't get up right away. I was like, "Oh no, here we go."
Yeah, yeah, you got to give it a couple seconds. They usually pop up though, and uh, turn 7's got a nice little runoff area, a nice little crash area, nice and soft landings typically. But yeah, I had a lot of fun working with you. I learned a lot about you and all the businesses you've been in, and your own racing, your time on the track and stuff. And it kind of mirrored a little bit of what I did in my youth. We went in different paths after that, but Groton was one of my favorite places to ride at, and I know you've got a lot of time out there. When I for this podcast, I brought my briefcase of some old stuff, and I don't know if you can see this very well,
Oh,
but
nice, yeah, beautiful. Granton Raceway over in Belding, Michigan.
yeah, I have to think it's like 92 or something because the garages are there. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun getting to meet you, and I love getting the newbies, but more what I like more so than that even is a racer that has never worked corners before.
Yeah.
So and seeing their reaction to it's not just some person standing out here or sitting in a lawn chair or whatever they perceive what's going on out there. It's actually a pretty serious operation. We keep the wheels of the event turning. That's our job, is to keep the cadence rolling. And I like seeing those reactions from the racers that come out.
Yeah, it's something I think should be almost mandatory to do some marshaling if to get your race license or to keep your race license. Now you can't do it every weekend. Most people want to be on the bike and racing or riding at a track days or events, but you get so much of a different perspective You see different lines that the fast guys are taking. You see the lines that the slow guys are taking. You see things to avoid, certain crash situations. Like in turn 7, we saw a guy get into the back of another rider and they both went down. So like that's something you want to avoid, obviously. But you can't get that close up and personal unless you're actually doing this job. And I don't like to meet the riders after they crash, but it is a unique thing that you get to do. And then see him in the pit lane later, like, hey man, you remember me? I was the guy who helped push you out of the weeds in turn 7 a couple of races ago. He's like, oh, thank you so much, giving you high fives and all that. It's a cool thing to do.
Yeah, I take it a little bit further too. Of course, I do check in on riders that'll have an incident in my corner, but also if they do something really cool, like the best pass of the weekend, turns like you say, you're trying to get, a really good drive out of there. And especially with back markers near the end of the race, if you're catching a back marker in 7, you're doing everything you can to get in front of them before the apex. So I'll actually track that person down and I'll say, hey, man, that was the best pass of the day. I can't believe it. Thanks for the entertainment,
For sure. It's something I think the general public should be more aware about. So it's kind of why I wanted to talk to you and get your opinion on things. How do you think we get more people to the racetrack?
It's an age-old thing, really. And it does take a special someone to really enjoy it and to spend your own money to do it, So I really enjoy it. And I can even do a track day because, for one thing, I'm not there for the money necessarily. I want my expenses taken care of. And I think I've got a lot to say about that too. But it takes a special someone that can turn a track day of 2 or 3 classes that are just put you to sleep boring and really try to make it interesting, because then I don't know if I did it with you, but when I'm training somebody, I tell them, look at the action of the rider, of the first one, of the third one, when their fingers come off the front brake and roll on and that sort of thing, which then makes you take a look at the rest of the bike. And if it's got something hanging off or whatever, that's when you spot those things. And then that makes it interesting and makes it fun even. But some people don't have that, interest in it to make it fun. So to answer your question, really is something like we do have going at Blackhawk. Doesn't happen everywhere, but we've got a good solid crew of 10 regular, smart enthusiasts, race enthusiasts that really get into it. So we've been able to build a little team, especially over the last 3 years or so, of leaders in the group, and I think our training is done pretty well, comparatively speaking. So that if you train somebody well and they have a really good time doing it, they're likely to come back and do it again. So the social side of it's a big deal,
It's huge.
Saturday night, having dinner together, dancing and throwing a few back, it's a really big part of the deal. You're with all these like-minded, wonderful people,
Yeah, and I think when we went, we all went out to dinner, and we actually went to Wisconsin. We crossed state lines and went to another state and had dinner and came back, and it was like 10 minutes away.
Right. Yeah, you fart in the wrong direction in turn 1. You're in Wisconsin. That's a cool part of it, for sure.
Yeah, and I got hooked up with Jess and hung out with Jess the last time I was there a couple months ago, and she's a really cool girl. She's got her own like hair salon that she does, and she works race control sometimes. So there's a lot of different positions you can do at the racetrack. It's not just being at the corner. Like for you, you're a flag marshal. You don't go run out and pick up bikes. But the young kids are typically stuck on that runner position, going out on the hot track sometimes, which is a little scary sometimes. But for the most part, as long as it's covered with the yellow, racers have some respect. Although when I was out there in the crash zone on the exit of one of the corners the last time, there was another bike who ran off under a waving yellow. I was like, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. You got to be watching out. So you got to watch your back at all times.
Yeah. And that's the other thing of it too. You're really not allowed to pass from the waving yellow to the incident. And how do you really expect a corner marshal that's waving and concerned about this incident that they're having to also keep track of someone that's passing through there,
Right.
So, I think I try to really keep that kind of stuff in mind. But yeah, Jess is a great part of the team, a leader for sure. She's just 100% by the book when she's on the, it's like there's no deviation from the book when she's working the corner, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because it really shows you that there's someone who's thoroughly enjoying themselves doing what they're doing. And her race controls, her track day control stuff is the same way. When she's on control, it's step by step by step, and that's a good quality of hers for sure. We really do. Rich and Brad, and a couple other really strong people on our team. So when you were asking how do you get more people to the racetrack, a lot of great ideas for that. With this age of communication that we have now with social media and whatnot, I would think that we would be able to get with the different clubs around, whether it's street road racing crew or something along those lines. That kind of communication might get some new blood out there, and that's just not me anymore. I've got the full-time career and have been there before, like for a lot of years, recruiting. And I count on other people to do that. And it's changed from the way it used to be. So,
and I think maybe a myth about corner working is you have to go through some extensive training, and it's a really hard course to pass a test to become one. But really, it was like an afternoon or really the morning with Jack. And then he's like, all right, go out with Jim and he'll show you the rest of the ropes. But this is basically it. And I maybe have more experience than the next person who doesn't have any racing experience. So it's maybe easier for me to pick up. But really, it's just, watch your back, watch out for your coworkers' backs and fronts. Stay safe at all times because you can't help somebody else if you're going to get injured yourself. And then make sure you're waving the right flags. And what was interesting for me to learn was I've now worked for, I think, 14 organizations as a marshal, and it's very different. It's very different from organization to organization. They all have specific flagging. They're all different. I mean, it might be like the difference between one waving yellow versus two waving yellow. So it's not completely different. It's similar, but it's like, okay, which one am I at now? And what are the rules today?
Yeah, trust me, man. You are so there's a couple things going on there, of course. Things have definitely changed over the years. Most road racing corner working for motorcycles came out of an SCCA playbook, and it evolved over time. And every once in a while, a regional road race organization will change their medical flag procedure. But more so than anything, from organization to organization, it's racetrack to racetrack, because typically you have the local race control person that is operating the event with the local team. So what we get a little frustrated with as a team that's there all the time operating different events is when you do get a different control person. They want things done a different way, but your crew, are the ones that really operate it for you, because they're the locals. They do it every event. They know how to clear a racetrack. They know when to shut up most of the time, and not to add anything, not to joke around, all that stuff. So you are preaching to the choir there, though. I really don't understand how we are at, let's say, in this country anyway, since 1970, road racing, that we all do it so much different when it comes to rules and regs and that sort of thing.
It would be nice to be more standardized, but what I've learned is, like, even when I'm trying to work different events, they're not all organized by the same organizers or the same racetracks or the same people. It's like, who the hell do I call to do this one? Because I haven't gone the route of just doing one track. I've traveled the country a little bit, going to all these sort of different events. So it's like, okay, do I call the organizer? Do I call the racetrack? Is it somebody else in the gray area who's like happens to be in control of this Marshal team for this event? So,
right.
And each racetrack is its own unique company. So every racetrack's different in how they operate. Like, can you camp there? What are their gate hours like? It's like, even me being around the sport for a decade, it's like I'm still confused sometimes.
Yeah, it is the way it is, and there is absolutely no change in that. That's part of the fun too. When I finally started going to Daytona on a regular basis, I learned to really appreciate that very thing, on how different places operate. And I operated as the operations director. I operated Gateway International for 4 years, from the big NASCAR events to running the club events on the infield in a full-time drag program.
So it's a three-track. That's a three-track facility then?
Well, it's a drag strip, a quarter-mile drag strip that runs alongside our oval. So Gateway is a roval and has been since 96, I think, when they built on top of the old facility, this new facility. I got started there after it opened, but it's just different from each track to each track, and you have locals that operate those events for the incoming organization. And you can imagine, I was just thinking about the ARMA thing, because they lost their race director, and she had only been doing it for a year. And here's an organization that even their big players, their race directors, their race control people and whatnot, they're volunteers. They get like $350 for the weekend or some absurd low dollar amount, while these people have their RVs and they travel from event to event. And as you can well imagine, it's not just showing up at the event and let's get this event started. They got to plan months and months in advance and talking to each different racetrack, each different control person. Do you have a control staff or a corner staff ready? And do you have the number that we asked for? And there again, ARMA is, for us, ARMA is different than CCS is, and how they want their flagging done and their priorities of operating the event and stuff. So you can imagine that kind of a person. And so ARMA also is not owned by anybody, it's a club. So to some degree, they rule by committee, where CCS and WERA, has ownership. And so they make decisions, and you don't have to wait for months for things to happen. And they tend to retain their employees because they pay them to be on the staff, So it's a different animal, and glad I'm not in the politics of that bullshit anymore.
Yeah, it's tough though. We could talk about the pay if you want, because like me traveling to Florida or Texas or Georgia, Alabama, I live in Michigan right now. So it's like am I stupid for doing this when I'm getting paid like 100, maybe $135 max for per
Right.
day of pay when it caught my flights a couple $100. Like I don't usually ever get a hotel unless it's snowing. So I bring one backpack, no what do you call it? I just do carry on. I don't store any luggage on the plane. I walk from most airports to the racetrack if it's feasibly possible, because I don't want to get an Uber and pay $40 for a 20-mile drive. So I'm doing it like the bare bones, the minimum thing possible, least expense is pot, so I can make money or at least break even. And like going down to Daytona, it's an awesome thing. I love to do it, but I don't make money at the end of the day. I'm happy if I break even. And then I'm not making money like working a normal job. I have to take time off of work. And luckily, I own a business that still sells products, if I'm sleeping, which is kind of how it helps me do it. But yeah, it's I find most of the staff who does it is 50, 60 years old, or older, because most young people like me, it's like they can't take that time off of work. They'll get fired, or they just can't afford to do it in the first place. So it's like if you really want people to be marshals, you got to pay them more. And the thing is, like, I find crazy also, only the amateur organizations pay. But the biggest organizations like Formula One, MotoGP, IndyCar do not pay. What the hell is that? They have the most amount of money and they're deciding not to pay their workers because they get 2,000 people who apply for a 500 person, crew.
Right. Yeah, I have a lot of different thoughts on that too. A lot of times, the racetrack is paying the corner marshals themselves something outside of a pro race or whatever. So that's part of it. I think CCS at Blackhawk is like the exception there. They pay more than the racetrack does to get their marshals out there. And then when I think about the major races, the really big ones, I would be okay with it's the expense part of it primarily is what kills us. So instead of paying us, they do get a hotel. I know that there's going to be however many hundred people that show up for Texas for a big event down there. But yeah, rent the whole damn thing out for the crew, and at least take that burden off of those enthusiasts that are there because you have to admit, because you're a corner marshal at COTA during F1 and you're able to walk up and stand in the middle of the racetrack during the break, looking down into turn two, there's nothing cooler in this world than that. And I'd be willing to pay a couple bucks to do that. But for me, I'm hauling my camper. I'm not going to, I'm spending a whole lot of fuel. But if I could go down there knowing I had a room and I'd save myself $500 to go down there and work an event. But it's different at Blackhawk, they let me keep my camper there at the racetrack all year. I don't have to bring it back and forth. And it does cover my expenses. It's 100 or 120 a day, depending on how many hours you put in or whatever. But there is that. Never been treated better at a racetrack with better hospitality. That does remind me of something. Did you have a thing at the concession stand yourself where they were trying to charge you or something?
Yeah, so I'm broke as hell, so I always ask for a discount. I'm saying, I'm working here. I traveled what was it, 6 hours or something to be here today to work for you guys. And this guy at the counter is like, "No, man, you don't work for us. You work for the organization." I'm like, "I'm doing the same fucking job. What do you want from me? Like you're hassling me over like $4 muffin or something, like a bagel. I don't know what it was." I'm like, "Come on, like I got a discount yesterday. I got a discount at the last 7 tracks I went to in the last couple of months. Like, and he did give me the discount. He was just trying to give me a hard time." I was like, "Why? What's the point?"
And there you go. It's going to happen once in a while. Nowadays I can, walk in the back door of the kitchen and grab a chair and sit with those guys. And, during an event, that event that you were at, where we had the Red Flags party auction, we stayed late, me and Brad and Rich, and we threw away trash, and we did our part because of course, we're welcome there anytime. I can go down there on a Monday and spend the day riding around or something. They just wave me by now. But so that's my thing when it comes to the pay and why I'm doing what I'm doing at Blackhawk now, even with all my corner working experience and racetrack operations and stuff. It's a place where I can call home. It's beautiful. It has good people, and I get to do what I want. And so it's totally worth it for me to invest in a camper that'll stay out there when I need it. My wife now is working corners. She's working 6A for me because we don't normally put somebody at 6A because it's a blowout corner.
The kink.
Yeah, at the kink. And I kept complaining about that in 7 because the first time a rider sees a flag for my situation in my corner is at the crossover at 6th. And they're like, well, if you really want somebody there all the time, and bring somebody, So I was like, honey, babe, you got to get into this for me, and you got to be my flagger at 6A. But, of course, she loves the place too. She now is friends with everybody that's there as much as I am. And she's got her own scooter and stuff. So it's just a really fun way to enjoy motorsports. And I'm not a knee dragger anymore. Done with it. It was fun while it lasted.
You hung up the leathers, so to speak?
They have been hanging up since 97.
Might have some dust on them now.
No doubt about it. Gotta get some of that leather treatment on there again and get them glossy and sell them.
So tell me, let's go back in time a little bit. Tell me about your history with racing and riding, and when did you get into the sport in the first place?
Oh, well, that's pretty much from the very beginning of life itself. On my birthday, my mom would always, every year, would tell me how it all went.
Yeah.
But then, she would start off by saying, a month before I was born, she was at Indianapolis Raceway Park because my dad was a SCCA racer. And 3 of my brothers were there as well. And my oldest one had diarrhea, and it was really cold and raining, and how miserable she was being 9 months pregnant. So it started out pretty early for me. Like I say, the old man was running SCCA cars, but he kind of quit shortly after I was born. And there's kind of a downtime where he just bought a bunch of dirt bikes. And so I got started out relatively young on a dirt bike. And then my dad discovered motorcycle road racing. We had a different local track that's been long since closed called Mid-America Raceways. And so I was a track brat. Grew up being a terror at the racetrack all through my youth. But I also worked everything. I'd work the front gate. I'd work hospitality. I did registration. And as soon as I was 15, I was able to step out on my own corner. And even if my dad wasn't racing or anything, he'd drop me off at the track, and he would drop me off at my corner, and I would set up my tent and everything on my corner. And I did that for a long time until I could start racing. Although my racing was really short-lived, my strong years were just a few. I was always at the racetrack. We had a really strong local club called MCRA, and it started up in 74, and just recently in the last few years hasn't been able to race because of our home track changes. But was president of that club, and a few times, and race director for their, we had as many as 8 events a year, 3 different racetracks. We took our show on the road, and so operated all that stuff. And in between there, being a big race fan, I've done the Petit Le Mans 11 times, and the Daytona 24 hours 6 times. And I'm a huge endurance car racing fan. I love IMSA and Le Mans itself, of course, and the history that comes with endurance racing in Europe and Asia. So I follow that really heavy. But yeah, it's all those years of doing club racing, from a racetrack brat to an old retired turn 7 corner worker at Blackhawk.
And in the meantime, you were working at Gateway for many years there. Sounds like you were high up at Gateway. So what was that facility like?
So that's the other thing about my experience in racing is I love all motorsports, but even more so, I build a relationship with every facility that I go to. And to go as far as to say, even when I do the Petit Le Mans and I'm actually inside for 5 days, I don't leave. And as many times as I've been to Daytona, I've never been to the beach.
Yeah.
When I get there, I get inside and I don't leave, because each facility has its own heartbeat. It has its own personality, and the reasons why it's a piece of shit and the reasons why it's some of the best things ever happened here. But Gateway was kind of a weird thing for me in that it used to be a 12-mile road course, or a 12-corner road course that front way straightaway was shared with the drag strip. And I put 1,000,000 miles on it, and I worked it from every possible angle. And then went back to Fox River, which I've been at for 23 years or so. I've gone coming back and forth to Fox River over the last 25 years because of racing. But when I started there as the operations director, I had to learn to love the new Gateway. It's an egg-shaped oval and a short one at that, with a road course that had 2 major transitions. When we first set up the road course, we used the banking in turns 3 and 4, which was really a bad idea, but we really didn't have any other way to do it at the time. And we did, some people did get hurt. And then when I became the operations director and I was talking to the NASCAR guys, they hated the fact that the pace car had to pull off the track so early. It then lent itself to things getting disturbed before the green flag went. And so they wanted us to connect the apron to let the pace car come down. So anyway, because of that, we were able to put in this huge piece of asphalt, and instead of using which Ed Bargy designed, believe it or not, he designed the chicane part of it. So we bolted down these curbs so that you could take the apron and be a lot safer. After that, we never had anybody hit the wall again.
That's good.
Now, we had 6 of the massive airbags every bloody race weekend, which is a nightmare, and take them back down and then repair them. And I think we had like 17 of the large air fences.
Like the 28 footers?
Yes. In-house, we had those, and we maintained them as a club. In any case, it just really changed things for us then. And it was still kind of a concrete racetrack, but in all of those locations, we had sections of air fence. And then the front of the air fence and the end of the air fence, we had straw bales where they needed to be. MCRA had their own tractor trailers, or a trailer full of straw bales that we bagged every year and took care of. And, You had to bag them or else they go rotten, you know. So, and because we were a club, you would get 30 people or 40 people to help most of the time. And then you have these air fence parties later on down, you know, in the off season, especially where you blow them all up and you repair them and stuff. But that's what changed things for us, Gateway. But I remember my first event and actually how I got hired. They just asked me to come over to help park the motor coaches for the teams, because the person that striped it out down the road course, that's where they put all the motor coaches for teams. They didn't factor in the corners. They kept doing these 16-foot spaces, but around the corners, you know, they start banging. So I went over there and helped fix that. It was real cool. Al Hendrick Jr. was there, and Rick Mears, and all these really cool people, and we're all standing around a circle trying to figure out how we now redo all this so everybody fits. And we sorted it out, and they passed along some good words to Chris Pook from the Long Beach Grand Prix Association, who I knew years ago, but they asked me to do what was called crossover control. And so I was sitting with race control on an IndyCar, or it was a kart weekend. And Chris Pook comes walking in the room. Hey, Probst, I haven't seen you in years. And I was like, yeah, man, you'd see me all the time if you hired me here, you know. The very next day, I get up to crossover control, and they're like, hey, man, they need to see you down in the main office. So I went down there, and this is the first day of the weekend. And they said, Chris Pook walks me in the conference room with all the brass was in there and everything. They're like, this is Jim Probst, and he's going to do our Joint Operations Center this weekend. I still had no idea what the hell was going on. And he hands me what they call a minute by minute. It tells you exactly, like literally minute by minute, this is supposed to happen, whether it's parking or security or state police or whatever. So luckily I had one of those, and it all went really well. So all of a sudden they hire me to be the operations director, unbeknownst to the locals, even the general manager of the racetrack. And so that's how it got started for me at Gateway. But I did truly learn to love the facility, the heartbeat, because the racers and the families and the track brats, they give you hell all the time. You learn to really love them, and you love the facility then, and you just make it work. Whatever's shitty about the facility, you make it work, you know?
Heck yeah. And it sounds like they have a little bit of everything. Sounds like they do the drag strip, they do the oval with the stock cars, they do motorcycles and karts, and maybe some open wheel stuff. So it's like, what more do you need? Maybe some off-road, a supermoto track, maybe supermoto section.
Right. Well, that's a funny story. So one year I had just mentioned, since we have all this stuff, let's do a multi-event motorcycle weekend. Motorcycle drag race, and build a dirt track on the infield, a motocross track, and run the road racing at the same time. And everybody's like, yeah, it's great, it's great. And I was able to say that because I knew my general manager would say, what are you, out of your mind? You can't do that. You bring in truckloads of dirt and stuff. But whenever I pitched it, the general manager said, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
So here you have marketing people and PR people that work full time for the racetrack. They're running wide open. People think during the off season, nothing goes on at the racetrack. These people run wide open every day for these NASCAR events and our NHRA and all that.
Oh, it's a full-time job.
The last thing they wanted to hear was, now we're going to put on Cycle Fest here with a 3-ring circus, and we got to sell it. You know, we got to market the thing. I had the enemies of the state all over the top of me. People that were friends were like, how could you do this to me? But we threw it together. We had the biggest problem with it was you had 3 different organizations. They all were used to a certain gate fee, where it gets $20 or $30 a head to come in the door, and drag racer families don't pay anything. So it all got a little convoluted, and we had shitty weather. And the dirt track would get too dry and it would blow across the road course. But this guy put together Cycle Fest, which we end up calling Cycle Flop a few years later after that.
Didn't go to plan.
Right. But the other cool thing I did was we have Musco lights all the way around for the NASCAR stuff. It doesn't necessarily light up the road course real well, but we're a 6-hour weekend coming up that we started planning early in the year. And one of their national weekends, Team Suzuki, everybody there. And Ed Bargy was the race director for the region. Well, I had gotten the portable lights ahead of the NASCAR truck weekend. So we flipped on the lights and put out these portable light stands and ran a 6-hour endurance race primarily at night right there at Gateway. And it's never happened again, but because I did leave shortly after that. But that was one of my cool things that happened there. Proud of.
And that's in, is that in Madison?
Yeah, it's Madison, Wisconsin. Everybody knows it as East St. Louis. And the hardest part, we've got 350,000 people in St. Louis proper, and then another million in St. Louis County. But we can't get them to cross the river to save our lives, right?
Is it that big of a river, really? There's no bridges?
Especially East St. Louis, man. So that was always our pain in the ass. Plus, we had really shitty parking. We had no parking on site. The only land they owned was the racetrack, so they had to beg and borrow. And
you got to bus everybody in?
To some degree, we did a lot of busing. Yeah.
Okay.
On major events.
Yeah, that's it's unique for a race facility to have that many disciplines available. I think that's really special. How many of those are there in the country that have that many disciplines available?
Yeah, it's true. Yep, I think one of my first events that I operated as a race director was actually called it was a Viper Club. The Dodge Viper had at the time was a hip happening car, and they did all disciplines. Plus they did a kind of a solo 2 style event as well. So I'm standing on the 5-floor tower that we have. Control tower sits at the oval, and I can stand at the very top and watch everything going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And the lines to get everything from the lines rolling into the facility of spectators to which class is running at the time and all that. I would direct an event from up there if I needed to. So, yeah, it was pretty cool way to operate the facility. I absolutely loved it. Yeah,
and you mentioned IMSA before in the Petite Le Mans. I want to thank you. You invited me to do that event with you one of these years. I just haven't, that's an unpaid event. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. I would love to put that on my resume. It's another organization to add to the list. But maybe in the next year or two, I can scrape some money together and get down to Road Atlanta to do that one, because it's a beautiful racetrack. I've worked that track for Moto America. I worked at I forget the turn names. The turn coming onto the main straightaway. I've worked the turn coming onto the main straightaway, and I think one more place. But I've raced there. I've done marshaling there, so it has a special place in my heart. And to do IMSA, which is like the pinnacle of car racing in this country for sports cars, what an honor to be there and to be flagging for it. What do you think about, because you said you love endurance racing, how is that on you as a marshal fatigue wise? Because you're there not for 20, 30 minutes at a time. You're there for fucking 6 hours 12 hours at a time.
Right. Well, I don't work corners when I go to those events.
Okay.
I can tell you that I know many people that do, and it's the best way for them to watch the race and enjoy it and be a part of it. But yeah, you can do 8-hour stints, you can do 10-hour stints. And it's different from each crew to each crew, as you like we were talking about. You do have a local group at Daytona that runs that 24-hour. But yeah, partially because I don't get paid for those events to pay for my expenses when I know IMSA can pay for my expenses at least. But also, I've worked so many events at Road Atlanta as a corner worker. Petit Le Mans, or an endurance race, has a certain European smell to it and feel to it, and the sounds. And there's something about being in turn 2 and listening to those Porsche flats. You're in turn 2, but you're hitting them here, the fifth gear on the back straightaway,
Yeah.
And another reason why I resist the new technology, hybrid vehicles, is I can't hear them from turn 2 while they're in turn 6 at Road Atlanta. But anyway, plus, they let you in on Wednesday. If you got a camper and you got a scooter, that is some fun, man.
Yeah.
I mean, watch it from every single angle. But at Petite, for the actual race itself, the whole race, I watch it from turn 2. So all those days I'm running all over the racetrack, I'm watching the whole event, I'm watching corner workers, I'm criticizing how the facility's operating because I would do it so much better.
Yeah.
But turn 2 at Road Atlanta for a spectator during that event, 4 classes. The heavyweights really that much faster than the lightweights. It's the only spot on the racetrack where almost every lap I go, oh shit. Because of, for one thing, they're coming under the bridge at turn 11. From that point on, they're flat out. They let up a little bit coming into turn 1. And if there's back markers, which there is constantly during the race, they're trying to get them back markers before they drop into turn 3. And it's the most impressive thing. And it happens lap after lap for 10 fucking hours. These guys are doing this every single lap. So you can't move me off that corner. We like the yellow flags because we get to run over and make a PBJ or something. And run back to the station, you run back to your chair or whatever.
Those full course yellows or the virtual safety cars even. And you know what? When I was racing there in Wera Expert many years ago, it was we came up to some back markers at like lap 6 or 7, and the sprint races. And I remember distinctly there was a guy on the racing line being lapped, and me and this other guy are battling for position. And so I'm like, neither of us are letting off. So it's like, okay, I got it was going up the inside of turn 1 and like just going over the pit lane exit lines on the pavement. I went up the inside of him, nearly dragging my foot pegs in the grass. And the other guy went on the outside of him, and we just split him like at breakneck speed. And I'm sure the guy shit himself how close and fast we passed him. But it was like, all right, that was successful. Now let's go back to battling. It was awesome.
Yeah, it is what it is at the time that it's happening, man. The timing of it is always critical on lappers and the leaders, man. But again, that the yellows then relight the race for me. They do, IMSA especially, the pace car will come out and then they let each class pit. So even if it's a short yellow, they'll run through the whole, let everybody pit. Then it's a full restart again. And what's cooler than a restart with 50 cars in it, or 60 cars like they're going to have at Daytona this year.
And then everybody's up to speed. They got a lot of practice laps in, so to speak, and they've already situated themselves based on their lap time so that it's like a new qualifying session with hot tires, hot car, hot driver. He's all warmed up. Everything's ready to go. But it seems like as a racer, as a motorcycle racer, we don't have virtual safety cars. We don't have full course restarts. It's like it's so different. So like if I was a car driver, I'd be like, oh man, I just lost my 10-second lead. God damn it. Now I got to start over. I got to do it all over again. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that reminds me of being a race director, and that in the rule book for years, I think it's the same across the board for amateur road racing, but once you get over halfway, the race director can call the race. And so as a race director, I would always stand on the start line or close to it, pace for if it was an 8-lapper, I would pace for 4 laps. After that, I'd walk off the pit lane and say, whatever happens next happens, because we don't have to restart and recalibrate and, the timing and scoring system and all that stuff, you got to reset. So, yeah.
And it's a part of it. It's just something it's part of the sport. You can't just get rid of it. I understand they still got 40 laps left or whatever the time distance is. So it's like, you got to finish it out. We had I think it's a good thing that they do that, though. You don't have to red flag the race and completely restart. It makes it easier on the fans, and you can get started quicker than going back into the pits and like restarting the cars and all that stuff. So I get it. I think it's just a factor you got to get over and learn how to adapt to.
For sure, I can only imagine. I think everybody goes through a point where they say, if I could go back in time with the knowledge I got now, I would have been an endurance racer. I would have also been a jogger and all that stuff. I would have been an endurance racer because of that element that it provides. You can drive, for one thing, drive, as compared to a sprint racer or a dirt track oval guy or whatever. You're driving for hours. And then that element that changes everything. Here you are fighting for 5th because you had a shitty start. Now you get another crack at it, or I've worked my way up to 3rd. Now I got a crack at 1st or whatever. So yeah, it just changes the game and keeps it interesting.
I think it's sorry to interrupt. I think it's cool that you're not just driving the car. The car is constantly changing. The conditions are constantly changing. So you might have X amount of kilos or pounds of fuel in your car, but by the end of the race, it's completely different. You might be, I don't know, 50 pounds difference or more, depending on the fuel tank size, and your tires are degrading. So you might be losing ounces on your tires. But the big thing is your traction amount. And like motorcycle racing, man, I've seen racers go down to the damn cords on their motorcycle, the tires, and still they come into the pits. They're like, yeah, I still had grip until the cords. And it's just amazing how far you can push these machines, but you're always dealing with temperatures changing. It's now nighttime. You got to put your lights on. So it's like tunnel vision, which I think maybe helps a little bit because you don't have all these distractions around you. You only got what's directly in front of you to focus on, but then you can't really look through the corner and see where you want to be like you would normally. So your vision changes, all your reference points change. It's a tough challenge.
So they turn their fastest laps at night. And they talk about it really happens at Sebring because they can't see anything else. All you see is your reference markers, your targets that you're going for every single lap. That's what you're seeing. So you're hitting them as perfect as possible.
Yeah.
And of course, you can run a little bit cooler, which helps everything, but at night. But that's the main reason. Listening to Sebastian Bourdais talk about it when they were running the Peugeots at Sebring, that was one of the things he alluded to was, I am not distracted by some goon on the side of the racetrack wearing a clown suit and a corner worker picking his nose, but here I am at night. I am hitting my marks perfect and going as fast as I can. So, when I was road racing motorcycles, I hated sprint racing. I just wasn't a sprinter. I was an endurance guy, and I was always faster in the second half of my event or of my race, or at least as fast as I was, and nobody else was faster in the second half. But And because, as you know, especially but back when I was racing, Wero was doing these 2 hour endurance races on Saturday, which were like $60 to enter or something. And when you went sprint racing, you spent 150, which is light compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
You spent, $75 for an 8 lap sprint, or I'm sure it was a little cheaper than that, but still, it was just an 8 lap sprint. I'm just getting started,
Right.
And
It's like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe.
Yeah. And my favorite races, the ones that I actually won at and had good results on, were always a long run. So I wish, not wish necessarily, but if I could go back, it would be a car endurance guy, man.
Yeah, one of my good buddies, Rick Lind, who I raced against probably 50 to 70 times or more. He's now not, he's said, I'm not doing any more sprints. He's only doing endurance races. And it's like, it's kind of a no-brainer. Now, it's a little bit more expensive as far as the bike setup or the car setup, because for motorcycles, you have to have you don't have to, but to be competitive, you should have quick change set up for your wheels, maybe a fuel dump for your fuel, because otherwise you're just taking way longer than it could be. So for those small components, it's a little bit more, but for the feel and the riding portion of it, it's a no-brainer. You're getting at least 2 hours on the bike. Now they usually split it up and maybe have a couple different riders, so you might not be doing the full 2 hours in one stint. You might be doing 45 minutes, depending how on your fuel usage and fuel tank size, and coming in, and another guy's jumping on it, which then gives you a little bit break. Maybe if it's a 4 or 6 hour, you can get back on the bike a few times, and they do a couple tire changes. But then you get into, if you have a multiple rider team, it's like, okay, well, who are we setting this bike up for? Who owns the bike? And then, how much does that owner want us to change their settings? Because it's a collaborative thing. One setting might be for one guy is total shit for the next guy. And the third guy's like, yeah, I don't mind, whatever, I'll just ride it. And you get a whole different, you want like a middle ground, something that works for everybody. Might not be ideal for everybody, but allows you to ride it, because you're not going to be changing clip-on positions or rear set positions on a pit stop. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And there's, like anything else, if you've got a bunch of dough to dump into it, that's different. But if you're two guys that are regional racers going after their own sprint or whatever, you're using somebody's bike. And if it's not yours, now all of a sudden, if you're riding it, you are responsible now. You own that thing.
Yeah.
Down the road, you're fixing it. So there is that strange dynamic of endurance racing, and it can be expensive, but just the track time, just a pure open for 2 hours as fast as you want to go. And when we were doing the 2 hours back then, we did them solo, and most people laugh when I tell a story, but I was on a 600 Katana, and back then it was production based. You had production or superbike to choose from in the race, and I was production, and they let you put a K&M filter in it, respring the front, and you could put a shock on the rear, but you had to use the Metzler Comp Ks, I think they were called back then. They were the shit at the time. Treaded tires. So I could do, like, the race my first race I ever won was in a 2 hour at the Little Talladega. Short racetrack, relatively easy on tires for a stock bike like that.
That's in Alabama?
Yeah. It's a real short track, it's a mile long. My lap times were probably minute 10 or 12 or something. The fast guys were doing minutes. But because it was stock production, I could go an hour 40 without fuel. So and it's a short track. So while my competition was switching riders and changing at the hour, I was able to get 3 laps on them.
Heck yeah, that's a big jump.
It's a big jump. And then they only have that much time to come and get me because they were no doubt faster. But John Ulrich actually wrote up the report for that weekend and I was rhythm racing. You don't use your name on endurance racing, you use a team name.
Yeah.
I was rhythm racing, and they said something to the effect of rhythm racing. I finished 7th overall in that race out of 23 or so. And he said finishing 7th overall against mostly higher performance machines, he said.
No, he's throwing no shade, Mr. RoadRacingWorld.com.
Right. And this was back when, Road Racing World was just, I don't even know if it had even gotten started. He wrote it for like the Southeastern Bike Week paper or whatever it was back then. But the funny thing about that race too, my brother Dave was racing heavyweight in that same race. And him and Wes Cooley were fighting for 3rd place overall the whole race. And they both came around me at what they call the bowl there. It's flat, 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 and then a bowl that turns you the opposite direction.
A lot of camber.
Yeah. But I went into it in the fast lane on the right side, and they had to come underneath me. So I had all the momentum. So when we stood up to come out of the corner, I came back alongside my brother Dave. But it was the first race I ever won too, So after the race, I'm like, and he's like, oh, you shouldn't be passing me like that. You should have just let me go. And I'm like, how do you think I won this race, man? I got to keep my momentum up, brother. I slow down a little bit, man. I'm in trouble. So that was a good one.
Heck yeah, it's cool to get one up on your friends, let alone family members. So what's it like racing your brother?
I wouldn't trade it for anything. It definitely got rough at times. Money was not easily had. So the old man, he hooked up my oldest brother Dave first. He got the first race bike, and he couldn't necessarily do that for the rest of his sons. So Dave got a really big head start, and he still is a phenomenal rider. But I kind of leaned more towards, I have 1 million miles through the woods. I used to be, I never raced much in the woods, and I didn't like racing in the woods because of how I rode. And I'm sure that this feeling and how it relates to my endurance racing was you get into the groove and you're not thinking about what you're doing necessarily. You're comfortable. You're thinking about shit that happened at work or why the girlfriend isn't doing what she's doing and stuff. But you're really honking along, and that's what I love about woods riding. And we're lucky here in St. Louis to have a huge off-road state park that has marked trails and an outer trail. And back then, in my youth especially, I could do 40 miles and in the same area without any recitative.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, once you're at pace, once you're going what you think is your max, still having some safety margins and not going 100%, but you're maybe at 90, 95. You feel comfortable, you're safe doing that pace that you want to do. I find I have to tell myself, okay, let's not try new things right now. You're just hitting your marks. Just to keep doing what you're doing. Don't be stupid. Try not to find that another 10th, because at a certain point you're like, okay, we got to bring it home. This is a race. This is not qualifying. This is not a video game. There's no reset button. So like sometimes, yeah, maybe I could have found that 10th or 2. But at the same time, I want to come home with a shiny bike and I want points today. So it's like
Right.
always this yin and yang of like, yeah, maybe I could have found another 10th, but was it worth it trying? Because last time I did that, I fell on my head.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like turn one at the old Indianapolis Raceway Park. Every time, even though I would go really fast through there, every time I went through there, I'd be like, man, I know I could have gone even faster, but it's either that or you end up on your ass sometimes.
Yep. It's saving it for the next time, trying to come home with some good data and living to fight another day.
That's for sure. Yeah, I've had to make those decisions a few times for sure. And sometimes I wish I had made that decision.
Yeah. You never know until you push for it, but you just got to listen to what the tires are telling you, to what the machine is giving you feedback for. Like, is it over the limit? Are you over driving or overriding the car or the bike? Because I think sometimes people push too hard. And if they're more relaxed, more, they're trying to brake too hard in the corner, which is sacrificing their drive, which is ruining the whole racetrack. They're getting the philosophy wrong. You really need to get on the gas sooner than anybody else, so you can go faster than anybody else coming up to the braking zone. But it's hard to teach that.
Yeah. Yeah. You really have to go through it. It's one of those things where you really track time is everything. And even when you're not on the racetrack, being propelled forward by a pumping motor and a chain driving the rear end, one way or another. If you're able to run around in circles on an XR 100, it's better than sitting idle until the next race for sure. It teaches you that stuff, IRP again, Indianapolis Raceway Park in a 2-hour endurance race. I come out of the pits, and Kurt Hall, who was really fast, Team Suzuki guy then, came by me as we're both going into turn one. He was on the straightaway already, and I had already been in the groove, and was settled into how I corner. So if it messes you up, it's usually that's something that throws you off your regular routine of that corner, of that braking sequence, whatever. And he came out of the pits going slower than I expected. And I came underneath him after I was in the groove, and I could feel my front end just turn in to scrub speed in turn two there, which is really fast corner. And I showed him a wheel because you want to keep that momentum up. You don't want to change what you do from lap to lap to lap for traffic or anything else. So, balancing that is the tough part, especially in an endurance race when you have traffic every lap.
And I think it's tough too to say, oh, I'm getting passed by the leaders. Let's not try to follow this guy because I'm not going to be able to do those lines. I'm not going to be able to break where he's breaking. Although it's like, oh, my heart hurts. Like I want to be there with him, but maybe it's lap 35 and you got some used tires and your rear's slipping a little bit. And it's like, oh man, I wish I could stay with that guy, but I'm going to let him go. He could do his own thing and I'm just going to keep doing my own thing and bring it home.
Nothing to it, man. Just do it that way. I was out at that trail riding with my nephew, Ben, who ended up being a really stellar road racer and tuner. When in his youth, we were riding, and I remember coming out of this corner going, you should slow down because he's probably going to try to keep up with you. And sure enough, I didn't, and so I turned around and didn't see him and went back for him, and he snapped his wrist, and he was trying to keep man here, So you got to know when to say when, and it is tough to let somebody go sometime in the interest of getting to the end of the race.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I should say this, but I've had a couple of people try to follow me and get hurt doing so. Because I even gave a preamble beforehand, like, hey, look, I might be faster than you. don't try to keep up. Like if I will look behind me every 20 or 30 seconds and make sure you're in a good place. And if you're not, I'll slow down and we'll get back to our ride. One
Right.
was motorcycles and one was mountain bikes. And the motorcycle one, this guy was a 20-year motorcycle cop. I'm like, he knows what he's doing, right? He's been riding for a job for longer than I've been riding. But he
Right.
had never done any track days. It was always street riding. Um, and so we were at the Deals Gap in Tennessee, and and it was my first time ever there. And I happened to just look in my mirror, and I saw him go off the road, bounce off the mountain, and come back onto the road in my rear view mirror. I was like, "Oh no, that's not good." Got to loop back around. I mean, he was fine, but his bike was all torn up. And another one, it was actually a girlfriend of mine, mountain biking. I said, "Look, we had done a couple of mountain bike rides, and she was good. I took her to the beginner trail. She did great. Took her to the intermediate trail. She did great. I took her to a advanced trail, and we were like 2 miles in. And I said, look, you can get hurt on this trail. Just take it easy and go slow, and we'll meet up every couple, 100 feet or so." And she ended up falling over and breaking her collarbone. I was like, oh, God damn it. Like, that was probably my fault. I don't know. Maybe we should have stayed at the intermediate trail for another couple of rides.
Right. Yeah, I would torture people with it before I have, I guess, especially dirt riding. If I got with somebody that I never rode with before, I would always say, just when it comes to the floor in the trail, just wait for me there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You got to like have a meeting point, but if they don't know where to meet, it's like, it's tough.
Where my point was, though, was wait for me there because I'm going to be slower than you. So when you first meet somebody like that, you don't sell yourself too high. You know what I mean? And then when you take off, then they're trying to keep up with you. So
Yeah.
tactics.
It's a learning experience. It's a learning curve, but man, I've
Sure.
learned a lot. I've become a coach for a bunch of organizations recently and the last year or two, and it's just a learning experience. And now you're trying to professionally teach people. I'm doing MSF, Motorcycle Safety Foundation, for people getting their license to ride on the street. Just doing parking lot speeds, not really getting out of second gear. Doing STT, Sport Bike Track Time, USMCA, which is United States Motorcycle Coaching Association. I will be starting in February or March California Superbike School. They travel the country, about 10 states, I think, this year or next year. And then the latest thing is I'm going to be it's about 90% sure, but Speed Vegas Exotics Racing, which is car driving experience coaching. So doing cars and motorcycles at the racetrack. I'm super stoked to be behind the wheel of starting off the Porsche, Nissan, and Aston Martin, but we'll be getting into Ferrari, Lamborghini. They do Mercedes and Acura, although Acura is in the shop right now, but like 10 different car brands. And I should be on a BMW S1000RR 2023 next year for California Superbike School. So, and hopefully in 28 days, today is December 15th, 2022. So my lease should be up January 12th, and I'll be moving to Vegas and doing exotics racing as a full-time job, 364 days a year. And then California Superbike will be doing that, I think, about 70 or 80 days in 2023. In Kentucky, they do Virginia and Pittsburgh and Alabama. They go to Washington State and California. They have a couple tracks in Las Vegas. So it's like, this is a freaking dream job. 2 dream jobs. The only thing is pending is like I gotta just fill out my forms for onboarding for the Speed Vegas, and then there's like 3 months worth of homework for California Superbike School. Like I've been in this industry for over a decade, but I still got to like pass all of their homework assignments with 100% accuracy. So I'm like a month or two into that. And, each organization wants you to teach a specific way. Like they have their own philosophies and their own things that they want you to teach you. Like you can't start talking about level 3 until you get the student through level 1 and level 2. So don't even mention any of this stuff until we get there. Like you just have a specific pattern, that you got to follow.
Well, on one hand, I'm jealous. On another, you have no intentions of getting married and starting a family. That's for sure. But how cool is that, man? Good for you. Do it while you can, brother.
For sure. Maybe I meet I really want to be somewhere Southwest because the weather is better. You can ride a lot longer throughout the year. But also, I'm looking for a spicy Latina woman who speaks Spanish, because I like to practice my Spanish. And when you go down to like Las Vegas or California, it's like a couple hours from California. They all speak Spanish when you just go into a random restaurant. So it's like I get to get better at my languages.
Well, it's funny. It's the same thing in Chicago.
Is it?
I'm shocked when I go up about their Spanish-speaking American population. And that's great, man. Yeah, it's awesome. I worked an event at the Vegas Speedway there. It was a drag racing event. I spent $5 on the slots the day before, and I found $5 on the ground at the racetrack the next day. So
Perfect.
it just taught me again, man. Once you get to the racetrack, don't leave.
Yeah, I'm not too much of a slot player, although so I went to Vegas twice now in the last couple of months. I went once for the initial interview, just one day and a couple of nights of sleeping there, and then they offered me the job. So then I went back. It was late November to early December for a week. I did a week trial run. It's like I want to just test this out before I move 2,000 miles across the country. So I went over there and everything went well. I think I taught or coached 46 students in 7 days, and everything went well. I didn't have any incidents with the car or with the students, and you're going with, this is not a racing school. This is like, they call it a driving experience, which means you might pay $250 for the entry level car, which gets you 5 laps. So you have like a 15-20 minute debriefing session in the classroom where they have a quick video and people ask questions, but probably not more than a half hour. And then you get me. I'm your coach today. Let's put on a helmet, and I get 60 seconds walking to the car talking to you, and then we're supposed to do a 2 to 3 minute briefing in the car, and then we're going. All right, let's go on the racetrack now, up to I think maybe 140 miles an hour. They have their own private racetrack. They used to do Las Vegas Motor Speedway, but now they have their own private racetrack. It's called Speed Vegas Exotics Racing. It's South Vegas, and it's like a 1.3 mile track. The straightaway, like I said, isn't that long. It's maybe 140. I'd be shocked if you hit 150, but still pretty fast. You're doing triple digits, and so I'm the guy in the passenger seat coaching the person driving how to do it. So only thing I have access to is I'm allowed, and they want us to grab the wheel. If something happens, I'm supposed to fix the slide. If something happens, I do have a brake pedal in each car, so I can apply the brake and stop a slide that way. But there might be up to 15 cars on a 1.3 mile racetrack with basically beginner amateur drivers. I mean, you have anywhere from like Jamie Foxx was there. You got major sports stars and celebrities who come there all the time, but it's generally like your mom going to this event with her family, and her kid might drive. He's got his driver's license. He's 18. He can drive, right? Sure, let's do it. Okay, well, let's go. And so you get all sorts of levels of people who just maybe want to drive a Ferrari and they've getting their dream car, or maybe it's the guy who has done SCCA events and he's like, I know what I'm doing. Or one guy was a NASCAR pit crew member for like 20 years, but he hasn't been behind a race car in 10 years. So it's like all these different levels of people. And our thing is just like part of my spiel is let's have fun. My goal is for you to have fun, to go fast, but also cannot spin the car. We're not going to get in any accidents. You cannot leave the racetrack. All four tires must stay on the track at all times. Let's have fun. Let's go fast. Let's try to have fun here. This is what we're doing. But then you get some people who are just super timid and don't want to go fast. And now we're getting passed like 6 times, 7 times a lap. And it's like, now we're just focused on not getting in an accident because he's not even taking the lines. I'm like, and we had a group of foreign businessmen who come in. We get like big parties, like corporate events, we call them. So they might buy out like 30 places for this particular time slot. And they don't speak English. They speak like no English. So how am I supposed to coach you around a racetrack when you speak Japanese and I don't speak a lick of it?
Right.
So like I'm just using hand signals and pointing, like get over there, go that way.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So it's a little stressful, to be honest. But at the same time, I get to drive all these super fancy sports cars and be in that environment. It's like there's not too many places around the country that do this.
And just being connected to another form of things you love to do, and the people that own that situation, who knows what could happen for you, just being connected to a group like that. And I imagine they would want kind of a short straightaway.
Yeah, they actually recently changed the racetrack before I got there. They used to have like a pretty wide sweeping corner, and I guess they changed it because everybody was going off there. So they don't really have any high speed corners. It's like kind of stop and go and a lot of S's. Because when you get those like hard braking zones into a tricky corner, you tend to spin the car. And that's the biggest problem I found was the brakes are so damn powerful that when people start to turn in while they have braking pressure on a Porsche, even a GT4, that's a recipe for spinning the car. And one of the guys in, I think it was a Lamborghini, maybe the Huracan, did spin the car when I was there. Luckily, I wasn't the coach of that car. We were passing that car as he spun, but I was like, oh man, like you get points against you as a coach if you have any spins or any offs or any damage to the car. So it's like I said, it's a little stressful. And like, how do I manage this person's expectations? We are not about to set some lap records out here today. We're just trying to keep the car safe and keep my job safe.
Right. Yeah. It's like I say, I'm glad you have the time for it. Richard Petty driving experience used to be at Gateway. And when I was operations guy there, the drivers all day or the coaches or whatever, sometimes you're driving somebody, sometimes you're being driven. So by the end of the day, they want to run the car, because they have to stay in these inside the lines whenever you have somebody you're riding along with. And so at the end of the day, they got to play a little bit. And they asked me if I wanted to ride. I'm like, sure, I'll take a ride. And the first time we were going into turn 1, I reached over and grabbed his arm.
Oh, yeah.
Been racing for years and done stupid shit in cars and bikes, but I did not think we were going to make it through turns 1 and 2. And I reached over and grabbed him. Like it's not the first time it's happened, because he was going WFO and much faster than he would have been with anybody else, So yeah, very cool.
Yeah, it's so they do something cool I think is really important. They do something called discovery laps. So they'll take you out after the classroom session and do I'm not sure the number, but maybe 3 or 4 laps. They do a couple laps at a slow pace just to get you acclimated with the racing surface and which way the track goes. And then they kick it up two notches on the next 2 laps. And they go nearly probably 95%. They're not going 100%. They're keeping some margin there, but they're doing it in a SUV. It's a Porsche Macan or Porsche Macan. So it's like you would never think this car could do that. And
Oh
then
yeah.
you get a professional driver who's been at that racetrack for 14 years behind the wheel, and he's like, "You guys ready to go?" Like, it's amazing. And one of the
Yeah.
guys told me, he said, "You would not believe how many Porsche Marcons we've sold based on just these discovery laps." And we don't sell cars, but like people will come back and say, "You know what? I bought that car because of those laps that we did." And then
Yeah.
it's like, even it's surprising to me because I have most of my experiences with two wheels, so I'm really trying to bridge the gap into four wheels, and this is such a great opportunity to do that. I have a lot of karting experience, and I've done some track days and autocross, but not a ton on the racetrack with cars so far. Um, and so you do these discovery laps, and then you get behind the wheel, and you're like, "Oh, I'm supposed to do that? Holy shit!" Like I don't know if I could
Right.
do that. But yeah, it's just the amount of grip that you really have with these Michelin tires is just phenomenal. It's like you
Well,
can
yeah.
go way deeper into the corner than you ever expected.
Yeah. I've never driven the Porsche Macan, but when I see them, they've got some huge ass fat tires front and rear on those things. So I've always wanted to drive them because they're race cars in an SUV package.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. That's very cool. I'm
Hell
glad you
yeah.
get it.
Yeah, man. It's just a little nerve-wracking because I've never moved halfway. It's more than halfway. I never moved across the country before. And so my biggest thing is like, what do I do with all my shit now? Like,
Right.
I don't. It's expensive to live in Vegas, way more than suburbs of Michigan, Metro Detroit. So it's like,
No.
okay, what do I need to get rid of? What do I need to cut? What's the fat here? Because I won't have a garage probably. I don't have an attic or a basement, and I'm probably
Solution.
gonna be in like a one bedroom apartment. So I just gotta slash all the fat.
No, I got the solution for you. It's a truck and a toy hauler, and you can live in the desert for free. You just need a good generator and solar power. And one of my good friends actually jumped in his truck and trailer and hauls around his dirt bike and works out of his camper for a living because he's a I don't know, a computer engineer of some sort. But yeah, out there, that's the place to do it, man. Get yourself a cool truck and trailer, and it gets cold at night, but that's what heaters are for. And I would be totally jealous to do that. So then you got your shop, got your toy hauler, your bikes can go in there, your tools can go in there. You can drag them out when it's time to put it up on the stand and work on it and stuff.
It's a bit of a mobile garage.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've really thought about that to be honest. Do the van life, so to speak. Even like I probably wouldn't be able to do it as luxurious as that, but like maybe a van with a small trailer would kind of do the same type of thing. Um, but man, I gotta tell you, you remember my blue truck, right? That I brought to Blackhawk a few times. I had a 2010 Chevy Colorado, and the thing just died, so I lost my truck. I had the timing belt went, and then the engine became an interference engine very quickly after that, and so it was basically totaled. So I'm driving a four-door sedan now. It's like a 2012 Toyota Corolla, which I got a steal of a deal on. But it's like, man, this is the first time in a decade I haven't had a truck, and I feel like I've lost some of my manhood from not having a truck. It's like, God damn it, I wasn't done driving that truck, man. I only had like 160,000 miles on it, but I guess I didn't drive it politely. I was hard on that truck.
Yeah, yeah, and those it was a GM 6 cylinder, you said?
I think it was not that strong of a truck, maybe of a four-cylinder. Um,
If it was a 4 cylinder, then you're asking for it with the GM. But that is the tough part about racing or traveling to be a corner marshal, whatever. I do have a Duramax diesel and I have a 30-foot camper. And it's all because what I went through in my youth at the racetrack of sleeping in tents and not being able to get my bike across the country because all I had at the time was a little Volkswagen or something. Um, yeah, I won't trade it for anything now.
Yeah, it's so nice to have like I plan on dropping a few things off at my parents' house, but like I need to rent a truck now to do that because I can't put a couch or like a file cabinet or anything in this vehicle other than like a bag or a box. So it just makes things more difficult.
Yeah, get some of your racing buddies that owe you a favor.
Have them help it out, yeah, for sure. So I plan on getting like a budget truck and getting one of those two-wheel trailers for the car, and then maybe getting a hitch on the sedan and towing my trailer, like doing a dual tow. Or is that the way you say it? Like towing
Yeah,
a,
your third unit dual
yeah.
tow.
But I don't know how do you think that would work if I have two wheels up so it's kind of on a slant and then I have a trailer towing behind that? Would that work with that angle?
It might. Yeah, I would fear other things
Like what?
with that plan. If you're running a four-cylinder Corolla,
Well, the Corolla won't be actually driving. I'll be towing it with a truck.
I gotcha. Yeah, yeah. No, you would probably be okay. And it's funny that doing something like that is not against the law.
Yeah, I looked it up. I didn't look at every single state I possibly passed through, but I just looked up is dual towing legal in states of the country, and it gave me like this huge list of. It's like most of the states you can do that.
Yeah, it's more about length.
Okay, so it's my trailer is like an open Harbor Freight trailer I built myself, and actually, it's one of those that can fold in half. And my dad's like, "Why don't you just fold it in half and put it in the damn truck?" I'm like, "I guess I could, but it takes up another bunch of feet, and I've never folded it in half." So I was worried because I've mounted a whole bunch of things to the trailer, so I'd have to take those off. It'd be a whole
Right?
pain in the butt.
Sounds like it would be, but you got to do what you got to do, man. And if you're running around in Ferraris and Porsches and stuff, I think I'd figure out a way, no
It's
doubt about it.
it's worth it, man. So enough about me. What's on your mind? Is there anything you want to talk about today we haven't covered?
Um, I did whenever I knew I was doing this, I grabbed my old briefcase and had some cool shit in it. Um, like that Groton picture I had, and then there's my 1992 invite to the Road Atlanta for the Weir Grand National Finals.
Now they do it
I,
at Barber.
I know, yeah, but I killed it that year, and I went down to Road Atlanta for the finals and got my ass handed to me, man. I was like 15th or something in my class after being out front all year.
Hey, well, that's not
Uh,
too bad. I mean, 15th in the country, the Grand National Finals ain't nothing bad.
yeah, again, it was production based stuff, and it was the old Road Atlanta with the cavity.
Gravity cavity.
Yeah, so even for a seasoned rider, it's really kind of intimidating. Especially, the cavity would point you straight at the wall. And if you got your line just right, just as soon as you come out from under the bridge or you start hitting the bridge, but even before you go under it, all you see is blue sky. You don't see any kind of earthly anything.
Yeah.
All you the sky, and you just have to keep yourself to stay in it. And there was no endurance race that weekend. They were no doubt 8-lap sprints or something. So I never got the time to really get rolling there and get comfortable, especially through that section. But there's that.
And I would assume at that time, gravity cavity existed. You're not using any air fences there. It's just a freaking cement wall if you get it wrong.
Yeah, me and a bunch of guys from MCRA, when I wasn't racing, we would go down to the Grand National Finals and we would work turn 11 there at the bridge. And it got really bad a few times. And and for cars too, horrific scenes there for sure. We're so glad they changed it because it really did change it. We haven't lost a life there since they did. And
Although when I was there, we did lose a life.
really,
Andy White died coming up the hill. Not in that section. It was it turn 6 or turn 5, maybe that final left-hander before the two right-handers going on to the back straightaway. They say he might have hit a false neutral and he hit that cement wall on the left-hander. And there was no fencing there. There's no air fence at all.
and so that was like 2010, 2011.
Probably 2013 or 14, I want to say.
Okay, I remember that. Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
last one that I know of.
right on. Yeah, well, that whole bridge section that changed there was the best thing that ever happened. Some of the car guys didn't like it, but it really did make the difference there. So yeah, I never raced it after that. I was the first one to work the new turn 10 section for motorcycles there, so that was pretty cool. I was going working for that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was the thing. I grew up with Wira. I love those people. I still love Evelyn and Sean. And I know I'd be, welcome to any of their events moving forward. But somebody else too that early on that I gained a whole lot of respect for was John Ulrich, because he was running Team Hammer before they were known to be anything here in St. Louis. He started the John Woo project, which was a racer that got paralyzed via guardrail. And ever since then, I mean, that was the 70s, I think. Ever since there's been no bigger supporter of racetrack safety than John Ulrich, and nobody that has put more money into it, into the safety of the sport. So he can be a wild man to stand there and talk to. Real interesting fella, but there's fewer people in the racing world that I have any more respect for than somebody like that, especially John.
And it's the Road Racing World Action Fund. And every time I put a order in on Amazon, I have it selected that I support that fund. So a percentage of my sale gets donated to them every time.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that truly appreciate it. And it just so happened that, that weird story about that. CCS used to run at Gateway, and they were mainly responsible for getting our air fence there for Gateway. But when they stopped racing there, they wanted to take their air fence. And I'm like, no, we're still racing here. And I had known Kevin and Eric Kelcher before that, but they're like, this is our air fence. And I'm like, no, it's not, man. It's the Action Fund's air fence. And I called Ulrich and I said, hey, man, CCS is trying to take this air fence out of here. And we run 4 events here. There's no way we can run without this air fence. So he called them. Then they called me saying, what in the fuck are you doing calling him, trying to take our air fence? I'm like, sorry, man, but we need to keep it here. And another situation where, John Ulrich hooked us up in St. Louis with some safety. I do every chance I get. I try to support them one way or another.
That's awesome. And I wanted to mention that did you hear about CCS's news recently? They sold Kevin and Eric Kelcher, Kevin Elliott, Eric Kelcher sold CCS to a new party.
Yeah. Everybody's wait and see kind of thing. I've never heard of the two guys that are the owners, only the little bit that I've read like everybody else. It's funny, man, the social media side of it, especially their Facebook page and stuff is just loaded full of questions. So I can imagine their position, trying to take a somewhat, you have to admit, somewhat old school system of um, registration and membership and rules for each class, and trying to modernize that cannot be the easiest thing to do, especially when you have thousands of motorcycle riders that are used to doing it the same way for the last, however long he's had it for. Kevin Elliott had it for 20 years or whatever. Um, so I will not rush to judgment on what happens next. Although they took our early Blackhawk round away.
Ah,
Talking about that, our spring CCS isn't happening this year.
is that the May event?
Yes. Yep, May event's not going to happen. I'm glad we're getting the team challenge in but Arma's coming back
All right.
in another days, which is by far the best event at Blackhawk, including cars.
I was planning on doing that event this year, but it didn't work out. I ended up doing MSF course in my home state, so I didn't have to travel anywhere, and I made more money. But that was on my plan at the beginning of the year. It just didn't work out.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with CCS. I really wish them well, but you really, if you get any chance to come down for that ARMA event, it is so much fun. For one thing, they fill the place. Where you were working in turn 3 the last time you were there, that whole area was stuffed full of racers all the way around that asphalt circle. And then it's so social. Friday night, they got a band and there's people having a good time. And then Saturday night, they have this huge awards giveaway, and everybody's together surrounding that whole concession area. Even outside, the inside's full, the outside's full. And if you're on a 1969 350 Honda single and there's 4 other guys with you, those guys got some game. They are battling the whole time. And then they have the cool modern stuff. And what's cool for me is every once in a while I'll go, hey, man, I know you from 20 years ago. And then, of course, the bikes. Hey, I used to ride one of those.
Yeah.
The funny thing is the old bastards that are running the event, the old Wera guys and the old CCS guys are old Arma guys now. So Ed Bargy and Sharon from Wera. So it's fun to catch up with all those people. And it is such a good event. I don't know how they do it and still run it as a club.
Do you think that the ARMA event is bigger than the CCS events now?
Twice as big.
Wow.
As it goes, twice as big.
That's huge.
So now I think Blackhawk wants them back, of course. It's really good business for them. So I think they give them Thursday of race week for just give it to them, and so they can run a practice day on Thursday and a practice day on Friday, and then kill it all weekend. And I really think they're coming back for the 3rd time in a row because largely due to the crew.
That's good. That's good to see that you can bring so many people to a vintage race.
Yeah, and I think it's a real draw for any racing organization to pick a small track like that you have a crossover for to get across and open and close the gates. Very inconvenient, but I think it's attractive for these kinds of groups to come there because they turn the event over to your experienced staff, and we run those events perfect. We keep the cadence of the event going. We never run past 5 p.m. And it's all because I really believe it's because of our crew primarily.
Yeah, and they're so efficient that they know a bike's coming off at turn 7, and bikes are coming on track before that bike even comes off. I'm like, sometimes that could be a problem, right? What if we get a runner? But it doesn't happen very often.
Well, and if you think about it, most of the time a runner, who cares?
Yeah, he'll just
What?
come in next lap and he'll see all the other bikes and track like, no, he screwed up.
Yeah, they're safety wise, it's really not a huge deal. It's where I have a problem with is when we put a safety truck on the racetrack without clearing the track. I'm okay with putting one out there when bikes are out there, but that means that all of us need to go EV flag. All of us do. Whenever there's an emergency vehicle on the track and there's still traffic out here that hasn't cleared.
And then
We
just
don't-
waving yellow in that one corner where they have the EV.
Yep. So sometimes we think we have last bike, and as you say, every once in a while you get a runner. And we've seen it too. A start will mess up the race. So he'll throw the white flag too early or too late or whatever, and things like that do happen. So you have to have those safeguards, and that's the difference. One of the huge pain in the ass is about having different race control people for the same crew. If I'm doing race control, if that anything hits the racetrack other than a race vehicle, I'm going EV flag unless I can confirm that the last bike is in. Not all race control people do that.
It was mind blowing to me that we have to clear the entire track every single time, because I'm coming from like watching MotoGP and all these fancy racing organizations that just have like telemetry and they can tell you where each car or bike is around the racetrack. And we do have that technology. It's just expensive, right? So like the race control doesn't actually know where every bike is on the racetrack. We, as marshals and corner workers, tell race control, 1 is clear, 2 is clear, 3 is clear. Once it gets to the next station, you can't see it anymore, and it's at the next area. We clear it. But
yeah.
my lap timers have transponders now that tell you data like that. So I wonder in the next 5 or less years, if we go to that system and everybody has those transponders, if that practice would become obsolete.
Well, if you're a real operations guy and you've seen it all, you will always want to run it as if you don't have a transponder system, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to start a race and your system goes down. Your whatever and that's what I don't like about racetracks that have a camera for each corner, and that corner is broadcasted into the race control center, because it then makes the race control person start telling you, "Oh, I see it," meaning I don't need any more information from you. But we all know that during one of these events, it's going to happen. Those fucking cameras are going to be down. The corner workers aren't going to know that the cameras are going to be down. You still need to go through the whole procedure of being cool on the radio, turn 7, waving yellow. Turn 7, waving yellow, riders up, riders down. You need to still keep doing that for operational reasons, for the thing that is going to happen eventually.
Because how many times do you see it where rider 1, 2, 3, no transponder, flag him down, and so like that's going to happen too with the other transponder technology. It's just a matter of when. And so you got a rider with a bad transponder on the track and he's not showing up on their radar.
That's right. Yeah, it's going to happen, and that's why Formula One and all those guys, even though they're using lights again, and you still, and as a driver or a rider, if you have been doing it long enough, you then start to rely on where the flagman is every time I come through this corner. You start to rely on their blue flags. In fact, if the corner worker gets it wrong, which you've seen before on blue flags especially, they get pretty fucking worked up. Corner worker, job. They didn't do that blue flag like they were supposed to. So you start taking that stuff away. I think we kind of run into trouble a little bit, or asking for trouble anyway.
And now they're starting to implement in-car flagging systems, the light boards and things like that. I think that's great. It doesn't take away the flaggers. It just adds to the complexity a little bit, but it adds to the driver's safety because you're looking over here. You might not even be paying attention to the flagger. You're trying to fight for racing position. Maybe there's a car or a vehicle in your way blocking that flag station, and you didn't see the waving yellow. You really didn't. So having something like for motorcyclists, what if you had like a light system in your helmet that maybe didn't blind you, but is like a heads up display type of thing on your visor would be very beneficial. But in cars, it's on their dashboard so they can see blue flag, whatever the condition is.
There's a good story about that, and that is so the newer modern cars, on the mirrors they have indicators when someone shows up on your left side. That got started in endurance racing when we started running rear cameras out of our cars. And the main thing was these slower classes, when they had these hypercars coming up on them on the back straight of Le Mans, that all of a sudden they see this little flasher go off that fast guy's coming up my ass right now. So that's where that technology first got tuned in, if you will, before they started putting it on your everyday road car. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense for us to do that with motorcycles too. And I've always been curious, so why we haven't gotten into communication yet either. I know that it's a spooky thing at first, but I bet you we could get used to that technology as a sport and be able to talk to the pits.
I've talked to a bunch of guys about that, and I think everybody's in favor for it. It sounds a little scary because my initial thought is you got too much going on. How are you going to be able to press a button at any time? But they already have a dozen buttons on their handlebars anyways,
Right.
for all these different fuel modes and mappings and all this stuff. So we have the space to put another button. And it would probably save some crashes. Say hey, look, there's a bad incident in turn 3. Watch out for it. Or hey, we can see Josh Heron at the Daytona 200 ran out of fuel. Hey, you need to come in. Looks like you're running low on fuel. Don't go another lap. You would have saved his entire race. Maybe would have won the damn race. So all these little things I think they're helpful. And we have the technology. People are already using Bluetooth headsets 10 years ago. I'm not exactly sure why it's been lagging so much in the motorsports for motorcycles specifically, because race car drivers do it already. Why can't motorcyclists?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons. One is a system like that is going to be relatively expensive.
I don't necessarily think so, because you get one for $100.
Yeah, an individual can do something like that to have a system where race control can say caution turn 7, for everyone to hear all at the same time, or pace car coming out in 2 laps, or pace car coming off the racetrack. I think that all has to include a whole system, and probably why the pro car guys will have a single radio provider Racing Radios or whatever the organization is. They show up there. They provide everybody with the gear because you need a single system that everybody uses. And then there's rules governing that, and it varies a little bit in cars. One organization will say, you can't give the driver any performance information, like switch to mapping or certain information they can't share with the driver to give you an unfair advantage or whatever. So that would be the similar thing in motorcycles. You would have to lay down etiquette for operating within that system. So it is somewhat complicated, although not impossible. And perhaps an ambitious, smart guy like yourself could develop a system and make a whole bunch of money on it.
Heck yeah, there's tons of opportunity. Technology is always changing. I just saw helmets not long ago that have for motorcycle race or riders. It's not approved yet for racing, but they have a camera in the back of the helmet, and there's like a little heads-up display, small thing, transparent on your vision. It's like, holy shit, that would be so helpful. Like, yes, it's a distraction, but if you see someone coming up behind you, you see he's trying to pass you on the outside or something, you could maybe change your line a little bit and prevent that pass from happening. Now, do you think that should be legal? Do you think, like, there's so many it's a ball of wax, like it's just information. Is information bad to keep your eye on what's going on in front of you without having to turn your head and look to see where this guy is?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's somebody that's in your pits that's talking to you, you know better than to check in on them while they're doing a head to head going into turn 3 at Blackhawk or whatever it is. You know, you would do want to try to catch somebody while they're on the straightaway, or, you'll be smart about that. I see no reason why we couldn't figure out a system of doing that and how it would really serve the sport if we could. Track days too, how many times would you like to talk to all the coaches on the track at the same time?
Oh, yeah. Or even like so the biggest thing I found going from motorcycle coaching to car coaching is you're now in the car. You're in the same car as the student. And if he fucks up, you're fucked up with him. And so like, but going to motorcycles, like I have no communication with the other rider. And this rider's making terrible mistakes. And we do like 20-minute sessions for track days. And so it's like, I don't want this rider riding for another 17 minutes riding like this. He's going to get hurt. And so we can use hand signals and pull them into the pits, but we can't communicate at all with them. So if I were able to say like, okay, you're on channel 1, you're on channel 2, you're on 3, 4, 5, and so on. And maybe there's an all button for my group of students, because I might be doing 6 or 8 students at once. And if I could chirp into student 7 and like, hey, you got to be way tighter on the exit at turn 3 there, or you're going to go off the racetrack. Don't do that anymore. Like that might correct the problem immediately rather than him making that same mistake for another 20 minutes, like those things would be so valuable rather than taking him off the track, trying to not reprimand him, but like, show him some better information. It takes away from his riding time. And he might feel bad that I did that, from taking him aside, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so maybe if I'm a track organization or track day organization, I want to be the first one to say, this fits into your helmet and it goes with the guy that's giving you personal one-on-one track time, and you guys will discuss it while you're out there. We won't ever call you in this section. We'll only call you on this section or whatever. That would be attractive to me for somebody that would participate in an event like that, having this unique one-on-one. So there you go, man. There's your cell.
It's groundbreaking. Like I don't know any motorcycle organization that does that. And I know a lot of them. So like, I don't think it even really exists yet. So it would be the first of many.
Sell it, bro.
Heck yeah. So if anybody has the technology, I mean, I had like just a Bluetooth headset. You just call people. So we could have like the easiest way to do it is just a phone call with like 8 different people, and to just have I think it was a chatterbox. So I had like something big sticking off the side of my helmet, which is not ideal. But I mean, that's the easiest, cheapest way to do it. We could all get it done for like $100 a pop.
I'm in.
Let's go.
I'm in. I will charge you a small fee for consulting on the job, and let's do it, man.
And we got a record of it here right now today. So we're coming up to 2 hours already, Jim. So I don't want to keep your time too much. But thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. And are you online anywhere? Where can people find you or follow you on the internet?
I'm really old school, man. So I'm a Facebooker, Jim Probst, and would love to talk to anybody about the stuff that I do. And I can't. I just had a really great time, and I'm glad I got to know you like I did, and hopefully you and Jessica can hook up again someday and make babies.
We'll see about that one. But for sure, man, I will hopefully be doing the Vegas Formula One round and the streets there. So it'll be an iconic race. I'll hopefully already be in that city, so I won't have to travel very far. Just take a day off of work or two, and maybe another one for the recovery day. But I don't know how much longer I'll be in Michigan. Hopefully a month or so. So I don't plan on being at Blackhawk in the coming future right away. But I did forget my anti-fatigue mat there. So you're welcome to use that. Just put a note on it for Eric Swahn. So if you want it, man, it's all yours. I just happened to forget it and leave it on the ground, but just recovered it. So yeah,
Yeah,
she's a cool person. I've been talking to her on social media a bit, and yeah. So thanks again, and I'll be sure to get this posted and edited. I have actually 52 episodes out this year, one a week already. So I might save it and hold it for early January. I haven't decided yet.
right on. Well, I hope you have a great holiday, and you're lucky like me. You've got a good family that loves you, and that's the best part of it. And thanks for inviting me to this. It's a really cool thing that you're doing, and having old Jim Probst on here after I just watched Mr. Posh and some other super really cool people in this industry is humbling. But thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about it.
Absolutely. I love you, man. It's been great talking, and I'm sure I'll see you at the racetrack.
Peace out, brother.
Have a good one.
Yeah.